What's up YouTube? Pete here with Green Dreams, and we've got a little bit of an exciting video for you today. I'm on a project that I started last August, so it hasn't even been a year since we started the install. I actually got called over today. These clients have actually become good friends of ours. Penny and Dan live here, and Dan is a commercial fisherman in Alaska, and he's fishing right now. Penny called me yesterday and said she had an emergency. They had some water by the house they couldn't get shut off. She asked if I could please come over and help with it. I didn't have time last night. They got it shut down. I came over this morning to inspect, and I was just blown away. I was just here, maybe 2 months ago. We planted a phase 2 over here that I'm gonna show you guys in a few minutes, and I had to, drop everything, call Melissa, say get the drone, get the camera, come on over. So been here about an hour waiting for Melissa, walking the site, just looking at the progress, and honestly just blown away. Some of the results here have been just unbelievable. We used a lot of biochar here on this install. We've used a lot of compost tea since it was installed. And a lot of hardwood mulch. So I'll kind of walk you all through the plants, walk you through the garden as we kind of go down here through the site. But some of the really interesting things I'll point out about the site, we're probably 90 foot above sea level. We're on a Florida mountain. And I say a Florida mountain because there's no real mountains in Florida, but this is an unbelievable slope. So looking here behind me is dead south. The other direction is dead north. It starts to slope off to the north here on this side. And to the south, we have that perfect south face slope. So in these permaculture books and everything they talk about, with slope, the best ideal site, in my opinion, would be a south face slope, site where you can actually slow that water, keep it on the site, and you also have that protection from that northern wind in the wintertime. So this is, the dream site. Another interesting thing we did here on this site, we installed some swales. So I happened to tell Dan about swales. He went inside, did some research. He's like, I want swales, Pete, put them in. I don't have a ton of experience with swales. We broke out the site level, we put some swales in, very experimental. And what I can tell you is, the worst part of the property, the most degraded part of the land, this was pure sugar stand when we started. Penny and Dan told me every time they had a monsoonal rain, all that silt, all that organic matter that was on the top of that soil from these, from the trees constantly making that leaf litter would end up in the street. When we get down to the street, you'll see some of that silt from the neighbor's yard, from the east end of the property that we haven't started to fix some of these problems on yet. So, this site, we filled these swales with mulch. It's something I'll tell you, I'm not a permaculture purist. Not everything in these permaculture books apply. We don't have a hugelkultur mound in here. We don't have an herb swap spiral. It's not everything has to apply to every site. On this site in particular, yes, the swales are working out pretty well. They're holding the water. I've never seen them fill, or actually where you could put a kayak in there and kind of float through it. That's always been my dream. I haven't seen that happen, but now that we have that mulch in there, that's like a giant sponge. So, when that water is coming down this hill, it's stopping that overland flow and it's penetrating that water down into that soil profile. That's what we want. We want to keep that water on this land for the longest amount of time as possible. So another key for success they have here is micro irrigation. Something that we don't use a lot of on our farm, but for our clients, those ones that want to really speed roll a system, irrigation is a game changer. So they have, a well here, deep well here on the land, probably 180 foot deep, 4-inch well, and we put 10 zones of micro irrigation in to feed these ground covers, feed these fruit trees. So let me walk you through the site. So one of the first things I'll point out, when Penny found us, she actually found us through Facebook. Dan was in Alaska fishing. She came out to the farm and she's like blown away. She wanted everything that I had at my place. And then when Dan got back, he came out to the farm and he was also blown away. And he really, in particularly, fell in love with the bamboo like I have. So something you all noticed as we walked through this property, there's a lot of bamboo. And they actually had some bamboo before they came out to my farm, but really loved all the different varieties that we had. So we've probably added 24 new varieties of clumping bamboo here on the property. And sitting here behind us, which is very rare, Dendrocalamus asper. This is a very, very cold sensitive bamboo. This is one that's in Eric Tonesmeyer's book, Perennial Vegetable Gardener. Supposed to have very, very good, delicious, edible shoots on it. So there's, Dendrocalamus asper, there's Asian lemon here, there's Old Hammy Eye, there's Graceful, there's Alphonse Carr, many different varieties that are already here in place. And we're sitting here in that zone 1 right now. We're right behind the house. Their kitchen garden's really kind of gone out of control since we started with the project over there. They already had some raised beds. They have a ton of gourds now, a ton of beans, a ton of tomatoes. And these big buildings you see here behind, these are actually pigeon houses. We're in a very interesting part of Pasco County that they call the Pigeon District. A lot of people had, raced pigeons in this area, and they come here because of these high hills. It's supposed to be better for actually racing these pigeons long distances. Dan's father, who lived here, was actually a famous pigeon flyer. They haven't flown pigeons themselves since they've been in the house. So we're gonna start walking down into the food forest now. So today's about 9 months after breaking ground, and I really want to show you some of the progress that's happened here in this food forest. I have lots of before pictures that I took with my phone kind of during that whole progress. No drone pictures, but lots of phone pictures, so I'll kind of chop those in there for you so you guys can see what this looked like before we actually broke ground. So something I'd like to point out real quick, while Justin Rhodes was here, this is one of the places we took him to tour. This was a project we were working on at that time, and we were just doing a little expansion over here on the east side, and Justin had titled that video, 20% increase in property value with permaculture design. And Penny and Dan did not approach me looking to increase their property value. They approached me, looking to have more fruits and edibles in their yard and looking to have a more useful space, looking to take this unuseful piece of land that was sitting next to their property and make it more useful, make it more inviting. We're inviting insects in here, we're inviting hummingbirds in here, we're inviting butterflies in here, we're getting different species of birds since this was installed. It's much more inviting. So yes, there's definitely an increase in property value here. This is going to be a more valuable piece of property now that this is cleaned up and it's not just, a mess of brush. I mean, this is, dripping in fruit, dripping in beneficial insects, dripping in birds. So it's a beautiful space. It's much more useful. It's much more inviting. This is a conversation piece. The neighbors are asking questions. The family is asking questions. This hasn't even been in the ground a year yet, and they're enjoying it and having fun. For us, this is the first swale on the property. This is that very upper swale, probably at one of the highest elevations on the property. And planted in front of that is clumping native Fakahatchee grass. We have a pomegranate over there in the corner, and then we've used lots of mimosa and peanut as a ground cover in almost all of these swales. I did not plant the inside of the swales whatsoever with ground cover, so that's how much growth we've had since this stuff's been installed. Everything coming down into the swale is new growth. Everything in front of the swale was planted. So some areas the peanut did better, some areas the mimosa did better. Why? I don't know. Some plants just do better in different locations, we don't know. So these are some unreal results. I mean, 9 months after planting, there's almost a carpet here. I've honestly never seen mimosa and peanut do so well on a site. I'm absolutely just kind of blown away here by how well this is filled in. All these beautiful flowers, that we're constantly getting off of this mimosa. These attract beneficial insects, predatory insects. They're native. This is a nitrogen fixing ground cover. Same thing with the peanut. These people are never going to have to really use fertilizer on this site. All we've used is compost tea and biochar since that initial installation. So I'm right here on the second swale, and something that I'll point out is, about 3 months ago we came back and did an extension of this food forest. We put another swale and some more bamboo in over here on the east side. And we came back and we kind of evaluated what we initially put in, and the homeowner said that the swales never held water. So we filled those swales with mulch. This is something that we did more recently. We figured the mulch will act as a sponge to actually retain more water. Since we've done that, water definitely seems to be holding much better into those beds. I mean, this site is alive. As we walk around here, I'm going to point out some mushrooms, some mycelium to you guys. There's guavas over here. There's black Suriname cherries. There's another guava, another variety of avocado. We also have some wax myrtles kind of worked into the buffer over here. But I mean, everything on the center of this swale right here has grown in. There was nothing planted inside this swale. So I'm walking in the swale right now. This is the closest plant that was planted to it. Everything else was planted all the way up here on the side of the swale. So we're talking 9 months of growth here. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable how quickly this stuff grows. This is choking out the weeds, and you can see it's kind of pressing down a little bit as I walk into it. And it's because, like I had mentioned, we filled this with mulch. So this is pure mulch. I mean, this is retaining an unbelievable amount of water. This is a living cistern. We're storing our water in the swales, so it's going to stay here for much longer than it would have, just having those dry, sandy swales like we do. I tried to swale at my place. I found that they didn't really apply. Filling the swale with mulch, this definitely seems to work a little bit better for us. The homeowners are all into the chop and drop. They were just out here 2 weeks ago and chopped back all these grasses. So these grasses here below us haven't been chopped yet. The ones above us were just chopped and have already recovered. All that growth you see on top with those squared off tips, that's 2 weeks of new growth, 12, 14 inches of growth. That's how vigorous, that's how quick that stuff is. So they've laid that around the fruit trees. So they're chopping that Mexican sunflower. They're chopping that carbon, that high, they're taking the nitrogen, they're taking the carbon, they're laying it down. They love the chop and drop, they're into it. They have fun. This has become a hobby for them, you know, getting out here and getting your hands in the dirt, playing. I mean, you're gonna completely change your attitude. You know, you can sit on the couch and watch TV, or you can get out in the garden and play. I can tell you, since I've been to this site, I've watched more butterflies, more birds, more mushrooms, more fruit. It's changed night and day. So 70% of the mulch we used here on this site, we sourced from local tree services. So we reached out to some tree services in the area, told them what we were doing, where we were located, gave them the address, and they started bringing it. I have all different types of composting mushrooms, different mushrooms breaking down the space. I mean, this area is alive. The internet is strong. The mycelium is just, I mean, come here and look at this. This is, I've never seen anything like it. It's almost candy coated. I mean, this is like a hard patch right here. And I didn't even pick this before we kind of started filming over here. I saw the mushrooms and I didn't realize it was gonna be like this. I mean, look at this. When I talk about mycelium and plants being able to communicate, you know, and building soil, this is alive, guys. This is the difference right here. Something that I didn't point out was this lot here on the south side of their house is about a 1 acre lot. So the first development was about a 1/4 acre. And just recently we came back about 3 months ago, maybe even 2.5 months ago, and we cleared about another 1/4 acre. So everything from about here over, it kind of angles up to that gate. We just recently cleared out and we put in this bottom swale. So this swale down here on the bottom has 40 graceful bamboo on it, clumping varieties of bamboo that'll grow up to be about 30 foot tall. Once that starts to establish and give them some privacy, we're gonna clear some more of that corner over there and start to plant more trees in the center area. That mimosa on the bottom of the swale filled in just wonderfully here, and on the top we planted the peanut. Because it's so close to the woods, I think we're kind of feeding the rabbits. They've slowed down eating this other side. We've given them something kind of closer to where they live, so it's not establishing as quickly as it was, you know, on the other areas. All these grasses you see over here are actually lemongrass. Penny had a huge clump up behind her house that she wanted us to split up. We did. We turned that one giant lemongrass into, you know, 12 more grasses kind of staggered here along the front of that swale. So, you know, this is 3 months old after planting. The mimosa is already doing extremely well. Peanut, we're battling the rabbits a little bit, but we'll win eventually. All right, we're down here at the bottom of the site. We made it down the mountain. My ears just popped. It was unbelievable. It's pretty high up there. No, I'm just kidding, but it is about a 30-foot elevation change. And when you look over here to the neighbor's house, I bet it drops out another 15, 20 feet. So it's a huge difference in the elevation here. I mean, topography in Florida, pretty hard to come by. We do have a couple of ridges here, and this happens to be one of them. So there was no clay on this ridge, but you can see, you know, you're looking up, the site really goes up in the air over here, really densely, nicely filled in over here on this side. And you can see where our landscaping stops. You know, the ground's degrading again. You know, it's starting to wash out. That neighbor's side, you know, when that water's coming down that concrete, it's washing that sand, that organic matter off of there, and it's stopping right here in front of their place. We'll walk down there to that far east corner. I just want to show you some of that eroded, degraded land. But this is the type of erosion problem we had throughout this whole site. I mean, you know, this is what the land looked like prior, and, you know, in my opinion, this is wasted acreage. I mean, yes, it's providing habitat for animals. We're still providing habitat for animals on the other side. We're supporting more habitat, more butterflies, more bees, more birds. So maybe a couple of armadillos and rabbits aren't too happy with us, but for the most part, you know, we're definitely increasing the aesthetic value. We're increasing, you know, resale value in my opinion, and plus they're getting fruits. This property's paying them back. You know, when you install an edible landscape, a food forest, it's like investing in a 401k, an IRA. You know, it's gonna build value. When we invest in, you know, a car, what happens? It depreciates. You know, I mean, that's what happens with an annual garden. You're gonna have to keep replanting it. You know, with what they have here of the food forest, there's not a lot of input required. They're not spending a lot of time out here pulling weeds. They're getting out there and they're enjoying their property. So I hope you all enjoyed the little snippet. Please subscribe to my channel. And I'm gonna try to show you more of our projects and more of the kind of work we do over here at Green Dreams.